Hello. Sorry, everyone. I'm just getting this started. I'm going to mute this while I figure it out. All right. All right, everyone. It is good to be here. Sorry, you can only see me. I can't see you, but I really appreciate everyone doing this. And of course, thank you for supporting the book. Sorry, this is not my normal office, but it's good to chat. And I also had some technical difficulties, so you probably will. But I really appreciate everyone doing this. Let's start with questions. I got to switch over to see what you guys are doing. All right. Who wants to go first? You can put the questions in the live chat and I can take them from there. Some emailed in. Someone was asking me about working with a traditional publisher. That he's talked to some authors who have had some regrets working with traditional publishers, and he says published a very popular photography book. He said it was his worst mistake ever when he signed up with the traditional publisher. The book got a lot of recognition, but he hasn't seen any money from it. He suggested self-publishing instead. I don't careful, and obviously the whole book about Perenial Sellers, there's a big difference between being popular and selling a lot of copies. And those are not always the same thing. And so oftentimes you hear people talk about how much media a book got or how many people they reached with it. But if at the end of the day they're not buying it, it's not going to be a success, whether it's with traditional publishing or self-publishing. There's upsides and downsides to either one. I work with a traditional publisher, but it's a decision that I evaluate with each book. So I ask myself, is it better working with a partner who's going to handle a lot of the logistics in exchange for taking a huge percentage of the revenue? Obviously, is it a project where I need an advance to fund some of the work that's going to go into it? Is it a book that's going to be taken more seriously with the traditional publisher? Is this a book that's going to primarily sell to my own fans? Is it a book that isn't going to fit in the wheelhouse of traditional publishing particularly well? Is it going to be something where I'm trying to maximize the amount of money I make per copy? Or is this something that I'm trying to people as possible, as cheaply as possible? And these are all decisions that would sway me one way or the other. And then the person also asked about crowdfunding. Look, I don't think there's many books that people want to pay for upfront without having read, especially when they're not even written yet. So I haven't seen this as a medium that's been particularly successful, but it could be different for other people. Someone's asking, what's my personal take on having a meditation practice? I don't personally meditate, but I have an article that's actually going to go out this morning. I think people who have trouble meditating, who want some kind of stillness or silence in their life, I would strongly suggest swimming. I find that swimming is one of the most meditative things that I do, even more so than running. Being underwater is the one quiet place left in this world. So I would suggest people do that. You can do a lot of the things that are great about meditation plus you get exercise. excited about for the rest of the year. Look, I'm knee deep in this book that I'm working on right now. Let me see if I can show you. These are all, I don't know if it shows. Those are all the legal papers that I'm working on now. I'm pretty excited about. So I'm always chugging away on that. Sorry, there's a lag here, so it froze. Yeah, always excited about the process, doing the thing every day. I mean, it's a treat to be a writer for a living, so that's what I like to do. Process for journaling. My journals are downstairs. I write in a small Moleskine, and I use something called a 5-year journal every day, where you write 1 sentence per day. To announce, since you guys pre-ordered my last book, I have a journal that's going to be a companion to the Daily Stoic that should come out on November 14th, which will be my new process. I sort of designed what I would like a superior journal to look like. And the idea is going to be that there's meditations for each week, prompts for each day, and then it's a journal you do twice a day. So you do one reflection in the morning, sort of a for the day ahead, and then at the end of the day you do a review about how you did on those things. Don't have a favorite direct marketing tool, Sandy, other than email. I've seen too much. I'm not sure there's that big a difference between direct marketing and regular marketing either. I prefer the sort of growth hacking approach, which is it getting customers? Is it working? And yeah, that's it. Saying, was I more arrogant in my beginnings in Hollywood, American Apparel, etc., because of your early success? If so, do you think you could have made it to the same level without it? I don't know if there's anyone that arrogance has ever helped. I wouldn't have classified myself as being a particularly arrogant person, despite early success. But I would say that's actually something I thought about all the time. I sort of woke up and went to bed with a perpetual fear of the early success that I was having going to my head. I really didn't want to be the promising young kid that had all of them that catastrophically exploded. I found that story was probably more common than that ended up being an older successful person. So that was something that I thought about all the time, that I worked really hard on. And I feel like one of the things that mentors do well, if they're doing, is to perpetually humble the person that is working for them, not on purpose, not by insulting them, not by tearing them down, but by giving them work that prevents them from ever feeling like they've really mastered it. And Robert Greene was certainly great at that. I worked for a movie producer named Aaron Ray who was great at that. Tucker was great at that as well. Cal, I just mentioned the Daily Stoic Journal, but so that's coming. The pre-order should be in the next few weeks, and then it will be out in November. Someone is saying, how do I use my recently published book, Project Managers at Work, to generate clients? To do content marketing for project management companies that I've done. I've done that once for Wiley. I don't know. I'm not sure books are the best way to get clients. Doing great work for clients is the best way to get clients. I've tended to find that if people like what you've written, if your book has had impact, they come to you. I'm not sure there's a way to scale or grow that directly. The whole point of Perennial Seller is that is a very bad reason to write a book, right? You should write a book because you want people to read it, because you want it to have the impact that a book can have. The idea that your book is a business card for your clients, I think, is the wrong way. What classic marketing tropes or classic marketing books are the most dated? The best marketing books that I've ever read are not about marketing at all, right? 48 Laws of Power or Strategies of War. So I tend not to read a lot of marketing books. You know, I think when people write very trendy books about certain things, like it's, you know, here's how to master social media, or, you know, here's how to take advantage of Google Plus. These are always regrettable things because the ideas behind them were never really serious to begin with. Favorite insight learned from sports recently. I mean, the best one would have been last year's Super Bowl, I think. Just the idea that you never, ever, ever, and that no game is unsalvageable. I just love that idea. And then on the Falcons front, you know, never think that you have it in the bag because you never do. Way out of bounds. What would I do about North Korea? Oh man, not out of bounds, but certainly above my pay grade. I do whatever General Mattis thinks we should do. Across a business-to-business company that would be a Perenial Seller. Well, let's look. How old is IBM? IBM is 106 years old, so there's your answer. Dell is 33 years old. Microsoft, Apple, consumer, but also enterprise, 41 years old. So it's pretty obvious. I love, someone has asked me what I thought about it. He wrote Buddhism is True. I've loved a lot of his other books. The Moral Animal, I think, is one of the best evolutionary psychology books ever written. So I'd strongly urge everyone to read that. How do I select the topics of my books? Note cards behind me? No, you can't. What I'm put by with, what I can't shake, what I feel like has to be a book. I want to read that book. And it extends and grows from there. What would it take for me to come to speak in San Antonio? Someone would have to pay me to come and speak in San Antonio. There's a form on my website. That's where all my speaking gigs come from. What major project do you have planned for your farm in Texas right now? How do you see the property growing and changing as you age? Well, I have this neighborhood kid building a garden for me right now. You might be able to hear the chainsaw. We cut down a bunch of trees, dead trees, put in big cedar posts, and we're building in a, neighbors have way too many dogs. And so hopefully this garden will be a shield between their farm and our farm. The fencing is the sort of constant project on a farm. It never seems to be over. And they're always breaking down. So that's one project. I probably want to build an office on the farm so I can stop splitting my time between out here and in the city. And I'd love to buy up some of the neighborhood plots around me to extend and grow the farm. So we'll see what that happens. But you know, we started with 17 and now we have 45, and 17 seemed like an incredible amount. Now 40 doesn't seem like that much. So it consumes you, which is always funny, I guess. Favorite whiskey? I don't drink, so don't have any. And that they heard I was doing a updated version of Trust Me, I'm Lying. This is true. It should actually come out in the next couple of weeks. It's not going to be a huge launch. The book's already selling, so the idea is just the people that are buying it can get the new one. And then I'll start writing about some of the things that I think have changed or have been updated. So that's coming. I am excited about that. Very interesting to revisit a book that I wrote as my first book. And I think I did it wrong. See all the things that I want to improve. So we'll see. Yeah, you've read to your son recently. A friend of mine wrote a book called Dragons Love Tacos. I like that one. And the football player has a book that he sent us called Hey AJ. Good. And then I read the great illustrated classics to him. I don't really like children's books. I don't know why we don't just read them actual books. It's not like they have any idea what's happening. So that's what I do. Somebody asked about my Apple Watch, which I do have. He's saying, has it increased interruptions or helped manage them? So I have 0 alerts on it whatsoever. I use it for running, swimming, and phone when I lose it, and telling the time. So it's probably expensive related to those things. I thought maybe I would use some of the other features, but I found that they were just like having my phone on my wrist, and I did not want that. Then the response to the Daily Stoic, I mean, very good. Sold much better than anyone expected. The daily email that we do is my favorite thing every day. So if you guys don't get that, just go to dailystoic.com, and I send one meditation every day inspired by Stoicism, often I've got to interview a bunch of really cool people. The book's in a bunch of different languages. The 100,000 copies sales mark, which is pretty good for the first year. Really good. And it looks to be perennial. I guess what will be interesting, what I'm somewhat curious about is, will people start it again? How will that go? I'm not sure. Sorry, the lighting is weird. I look like I have like a Homer Simpson 5 o'clock shadow here. I don't normally look like this. I don't know what's going on. One thing I would do differently for Perenial Seller. So I really like the name Perennial Seller, but the debate is always whether it was titled right. You know, a lot of my other books have been successful because they had sort of inspiring sort of phrase generated titles. So one of the titles I thought about after I published it would be the only thing that matters is making it's work that lasts, or you know, if I could do it again, would I maybe tackle it with a slightly more inspirational rather than tactical title? I don't know. Think about what a children's book. No, but you never know. As a talent rep, what recommendations would you make on the entertainment industry? William Goldman's books are very good. What else have I liked? Yeah, he wrote a good one called What Lie Did I Tell? That one's really good. There's a really good book about Sony's purchase of Columbia Pictures that I would urge people to read. I really like that one. I'm forgetting what it's called. I don't know. I haven't read in that space in a long time. Obviously, if you're trying to figure out the business, Robert Greene's 48 Laws of Power is probably the best one you could read. Know if an autobiographical story is too personal and not right for your audience. I like James Altucher's advice. You should write the things you're afraid to say. So the thing that you think is too personal is probably precisely the one to write. Although I tend not to like to do personal stories. I don't think they stand up that well over time. And it requires the reader to give a shit about who you are. And I would rather focus on something that we universally agree is interesting. That's why I try to draw from history. Bikini baristas, what would the Stoics think about that? Not a joke question. You can disregard if you think so. I'm not really sure it's a question. So that's why. Should we expect you to keep up one book a year? How do you reconcile writing books so quickly with wanting them to be perennial? So just because a book comes out once per year doesn't mean that it took 1 year to write. Like Perenial Seller came out the same year as some of my other books, or within a year, but I've been working on it for over 2 years. So I don't think it will take one book a year. I'll continue that pace. It's just too much, and I'm exhausted. But look, John Grisham does 2 books a year. James Patterson does sometimes more than 2. The idea of the amount of time a book taking needing to be one longer than a year, I don't think is contradictory to the themes in the book. It should take as long as it's going to take. But different books take different amounts of time, and so far the ones that I've been fortunate enough to write, I've been able to get them out pretty quickly. Colombia, what do you think of Latin America? Food was very good. I was only in Colombia for like 36 hours, but I had a very good time. I've not read The Mending Wall by Robert Frost, but I will check it out. We'll write it down. I've noticed that you've been posting a lot about fitness lately. Is this more of a priority these days? Have not recently, nor is it any more or less than I normally run or do some form of strenuous exercise almost every day. And I have, I've written about this a bunch, but I think that there's a link between creativity and exercise, and so they fuel each other. I just happen to post them when I travel, because usually I get to see cool things while I do so. Beyond property, how do I invest? The house is, your house is usually not an investment. So buying a farm is probably costs more money than it will make. Certainly, I own a couple real estate properties. I like Wealthfront as sort of passive index forms of investing. I've done a little bit in startups. And then I try to put my money back into the businesses that I own and run. Obviously, taking a return on the money you have is important. Right now, looking at the math for me, and Ramit Sethi has talked about this a lot, for me is usually in making more stuff or in growing the businesses that I have. So that's why I tend to think about, for the most part, financially. And then I want the investments that I have to be, that are not that, to be as passive and as safe as possible. How do you want to be remembered by your loved ones one day? I don't think about this. I would prefer to think about how things are going right now. The truth is, you don't control how people remember you, nor would it be any consolation or have any meaning to you because you're dead. So I don't think about that. Eventually, urban or rural place to be or live. In the city, and then a farm. And so I feel like I get the best of both. You're known as a great marketer. Is that something you want to be known as, or does it just become a byproduct of what you do? Hey, Daniel. I mean, I would like to think that I am not known as a great marketer, but that I do great marketing work. I feel like the clients that I've worked for would clearly agree with that. I feel like the results that I've gotten for them speaks plenty loudly. So I think it is a byproduct of what you do. I mean, do marketing successfully. If you grow and expand the reach of businesses or people, a reputation should follow from that. With an intense wave of disinformation from Russia, appealing to religion and nationalism, how will you teach your kids to filter information? Luckily, I wrote a book about this, and I wrote a piece after the election where I said the first thing that everyone should do is stop watching the news. It is designed to manipulate and deceive, and the less you can watch it, not only the happier you will be, but probably the deeper understanding we'll actually have of what's going on. Can we do 200-meter repeats together and run? Or what's your favorite place to do a 10-mile run in Austin? No, we can't run together. I like to run by myself with a few exceptions. And Ladybird Lake in Austin has a exact 10-mile loop, all dirt, that I highly recommend. Which of time are you working from home, farm versus in the city? I sort of split my time between the two, so let's say 50-50. When writing or promoting your book, how do you find the balance between listening to your editor and following your own personal thoughts? Are you a control freak or do you take advice? You have to take advice. That's the whole point of having an editor. If you don't, you might as well self-publish. Even if you do that, you should self-publish. The key is to know what you're trying to accomplish. So if you know where you want the book to end up, like book to be, it's much easier for you to take advice and feedback because you know whether it's getting you closer to that or further away from that. So right now I'm going through edits on the book that I'm working on, and some of the notes are right, and some of the notes are my editor's version of what the book should be. And I wouldn't say that she's wrong. It's just not the book that I'm interested in writing. And so knowing very clearly what it is that you're trying to do is essential. This is I'm going to talk and talk. I wish there was a way I could actually hear from you guys. Book studies. Coach, which is about Bill Belichick. Score takes care of itself. The Winner Within. 40 Years of Power, let's say the third time I've recommended it. Essentialism by Greg McCowan. Yeah, that's a good start. Let's see here. Let me look at some of the email questions. I just finished a complete first draft of a nonfiction book. It's about the psychology of why we're becoming more outraged, offended in the digital age. That's interesting. I'm self-publishing it. My instinct now is to give it to a bunch of diverse, trusted people to read it as both a proofread and to see what works or doesn't. What would be your advice to someone with a first draft about how to proceed on to the second draft when knowing it's working or nearing completion? So about a little bit earlier, which is how do you know exactly where, do you have a clear picture of where you're trying to end up? The worst thing you can do is, if you don't, is to get a bunch of feedback that takes you in a million different directions. So have a very clear idea of who the audience is, what kind of book you want to write, why you're writing this book. These things are going to help you filter that. There's a line I have from Neil Gaiman in Perenial Seller where he says, when people tell you something's wrong, they're almost always right. And when people tell you how to fix it, they're almost always wrong. And your note. So if you see a lot of red ink, don't necessarily exactly follow their advice, but something not working in this section. And I, as the author who knows what this book is trying to be, knows how to fix it. Your conversation with Gary Vaynerchuk was one happening. I thought Gary was someone who you could define as a modern Stoic in that sense. I wouldn't define Gary as a modern Stoic. I really like Gary. I think he does great stuff. But different people have different personality types, different approaches. I don't know where I would put Gary, but I think certainly there is a lot of wisdom in what he talks about, and certainly a lot of what he does overlaps with some of the Stoic teachings. But Gary's a very ambitious guy. Gary has very big goals. Gary is very success-driven. These are all admirable things, but I'd probably take them outside the philosophical context. So I really like Gary, and I don't want that to sound like a knock at all. that wouldn't be the label that I would attach to him. It's very intense, very focused, very driven. I think stoic is the word that I would use. I don't, and that brings up your second question, which is who would I define as a modern day stoic? I don't spend a lot of time on that. I'm not sure what label, what value that label provides, right? Is there something you can learn from the person? Great. Like, I don't see myself as a stoic. It seems kind of lame, honestly, to go around calling yourself that, particularly a modern day one. I just like to see people as they are, for what they are, what they can teach, what value they're adding. And that would be something I would think about. Sorry, I'm scrolling down here. Have I heard of Josh Ritter? He's who I think of for Perennial Seller Musician. I have not. Any thoughts on the recent South Park episode that interfered with Amazon Echo and Google Home? I thought it was funny. Thoughts on cryptocurrency? Interesting. I have a little bit of money in cryptocurrencies. I think that the potential upside makes the bet worth making. A ton of hype in this space. It strikes me as maybe the first internet sort of hype-driven bubble, which presents some dangers and worries, and that's something that I'm concerned about. But I think the underlying technology and the logic behind it makes total sense. So it's probably one of those things that people are underestimating or overestimating in the long term, overestimating in the short term, underestimating in the long term. You recommend each month our clients? Always zero. I recommend the client's book if I actually liked it, and clients that I actually like, which is a very fortunate position to be on, but that's the truth. The relationship that I have with my audience, with you guys recommending books that I like, is worth a lot to me, right? And so the idea that if someone's going to pay me a few bucks to recommend a book wouldn't be worth it. And they're only books that I've read and liked. Topo Chico Kick. Here it is here. I don't remember the first time I had it, actually. I'd already moved to Austin and I found it, and I used to drink Perrier, but I actually prefer the bottle for Topo Chico, and I feel like the bubbles are best. In Perennial Seller, how do you account for works that in their day received mixed and negative reception, like Moby Dick? It is important. Moby Dick also got positive reviews, and Herman Melville was a pretty well-known author at the time. So it's not as clear-cut as maybe people want to make it seem. Utterly unknown in his own time. I mean, the fact that it got all these negative reviews sort of gives you a sense of the level that Melville was operating under. Fight Club really negatively reviewed when it came out. I didn't know that was true. The problems inherent in blogs in my first book. Do you think the problem of rewarding bogus or incorrect news will ever be fixed? Certainly hope so, but I do not know. I want to read next. I sort of go where my gut takes me. I don't really have a system for that. It seems like something new or related to something I've been thinking about a lot lately. That's what I tackle. The fact that I'm always researching for my own books is something that drives it too, of course. What's my process for coming up with marketing plans? Created many. It's going to be interesting. What have people never done before? What's going to get attention? What's the best thing we could do to illustrate or prove the ideas in this book? So that's what I think about. How do I feel about Medium and their approach to membership, paying writers? I think it's interesting. I certainly hope it succeeds. I guess the question is, do you use it? Because I don't. I think we've gotten so addicted to free content that's going to take a long time to fix. I actually think one of the arguments for cryptocurrencies is that they might be able to solve this. Create some underlying technology related to it. Was I always alcohol free, or did I stop drinking? I just don't like the taste of alcohol, and I don't see the upside. So I never really started drinking soda in 2011 since. Fatherhood's treating me good. I love it. Do you have to have something to promote to start an email list? No, that's the whole point. I wrote about this for LinkedIn, and I've talked about the reading list email many, many times. But that list started, and it existed for like 5 years before I ever had anything to promote. So you should start a list because you want to add value to people, and because you have something to add. You ever consider creating a community or creating some sort of formal curriculum for Stoicism? Yeah, I mean, look, I have dailystoic.com, which I hope everyone checks out. Page has almost 100,000 followers, so there's lots of great stuff. I've always been disappointed in the community around Stoicism. I feel like the Stoic behavior, a lot of judgment, a lot of criticism, a lot of getting outraged about crap that doesn't matter, a lot of trolling for some reason. That's always been disappointing to me, and maybe a little bit aloof from it. What's the biggest difference between speaking to a sports team compared to a business? That's a good question. I would say weirdly, the sports teams are much more receptive to what I'm talking about. They take the message to heart. They're used to hearing stuff like that. I think business people often want very tactile, specific things, and on the sports side, they realize the sort of inspiration and motivation and the mindset part of things is actually the most essential part. Can gaining an Instagram following work similar to an email list? Sure, but your access to your Instagram followers is algorithmically determined. So if according to Instagram's algorithm, people aren't liking your stuff, they will stop showing it to people. So Instagram is a intermediary between you and your fans, and that's not great. Same with Facebook, right? The average Facebook post 7% reach. The average Twitter post is less than that, I believe. So you work very hard to get these followers, and then you don't actually have access to them. That's alarming, and probably that's not where I would build my house. How do I keep up with my index card system? I mean, it's a process, right? So it can't get ahead of me. I'm the one running the process, I guess. But every couple weeks, I start working on I go back through the books that I've read, and I start taking the notes. So that's what it is. What's an area of your life that you need more discipline in? Can I get a shout out? Hi, Julie Merrick. I said your name. Thanks. Have you guys heard the Louis C.K. bit where he says, "I don't eat till I'm full. I eat till I fucking hate myself." I don't have the best food discipline, and I wish I did. Where do I buy my cows from? So I bought them from my neighbor at first, and then the guy that I bought the farm from, and then I bought some from auction. So a bunch of different places. And then obviously the cows you have make more cows. Someone's asking, when I do talks, do I do an 18 to 20 minute TED style talk or they want me to. I did a talk in Palm Springs for Anytime Fitness. uh, 3 days ago, and I did 2 90-minute talks back to back on the same talk. So the audience, one audience, and then the audience came out, and a new audience came in. So it's whatever they pay me for, that's what I'll talk about, and that's the style that I'll talk about in. Am I planning on keeping the Daily Stoic email around indefinitely? As long as people, I will keep sending it. So someone's asking about the note cards again. How long does it take? I mean, yeah, it can take time. It can take a whole day. I usually work on it on the weekend, caught up on like a Saturday or Sunday, or sometimes when I travel and then it's just me, I'll bring books with me and do them then. Have I read an early draft of Robert Greene's book? It's not done, so I haven't read it. Song, Hallowed Be Thy Name, The Clairvoyant, Passchendaele, and then I have a bunch of songs from Brave New World that are my favorites. How often do I read fiction? All the time. I just don't think there's enough good fiction. Will I email the recording of this? Yes. How do I mark up my Matthew? I've written about this many, many times. Card system and how to keep a commonplace book. No, Alexander, I'm not choosing not to answer your question. I didn't see it. How does one overcome apathy? I don't know. It's never been a problem for me. So I don't want to lecture people about something that I haven't struggled with or understood. But I would say that when you have a very clear goal and a very clear pathway for getting to that goal, apathy tends to take care of itself. How I'm most hypocritical of your own advice? Well, I hope it doesn't come off as me lecturing other people. I write primarily with myself as the audience in mind, in some sense. Like I'm writing the things that I'm struggling with or working on to improve. So the advice is not simply to you, but also to me. A normal person, I have a temper that causes problems for me. I react emotionally to things. I get distracted by things that don't matter. I spend time and energy on things that are outside my control. But this is why I write about these things, right? I'm not writing about them because I've mastered them. I'm writing about them because I'm working on them. Someone's asking, is he missing something or is there no live video? Pretty sure there's live video. I hope someone would have said something if there wasn't. You guys can see this live, right? All right, I'll wait for someone to answer that. What is my most valuable possession under $100 apart from your note cards and journal? Here's my copy of Meditations. This would have been like 12 bucks. I like it a lot, obviously. Do I ever take advice from my followers? I'll take advice from anyone, man. If it's good advice, I'll take it. I don't care. There's a good line from Seneca. I'll quote a bad author if the line is good. Do I have an opinion about Dragon software, any program that acts as a court reporter and use it instead of typing a column? Whatever works for you, Kate. I have no opinion. Churchill dictated his books. Great writer Robert Caro writes by hand on a legal pad. So there's a wrong answer, but you have to put in the work. Scrivener, I think people overestimate tools, the importance of tools. I think they nerd out about them. Document gives you 98% of what you need. I'd rather fight 100 duck-sized horses or one. I've always been weirded out by this question. It does not strike me as that difficult to duck-sized horses. I feel, and then they would run away. As someone who owns ducks, I'm not particularly intimidated by them. Underrated, unconventional advice for a successful marriage. Life is the good one. If you're given $5 million to open a small museum, what kind of museum would you create? I don't know. $5 million should get you much better than a small museum, though. How do I separate the wheat from the chaff when taking the notes? I don't. I write the notes that strike me as being wheat at the time, and then later, if they strike me as chaff, I throw them away. I appear to be introverted. How do I overcome presenting to large groups? This is a good question. Definitely introverted. I think I would be speaking in front of large groups, but public speaking a couple times. But a couple of thoughts. One, if you know what the fuck you're talking about, it's not that hard to feel confident in front of a group. Remember, you want evidence, not belief. And then the fact that they pay you to do it makes it a job, and therefore there's no room for, feelings like that. Lessons on business partner from Brass Check. Everyone needs to be on the same page about what they're trying to accomplish with the company. The problems I've had with Brass Check have been when that's not true. And the easiest decisions we've made have been ones where it wasn't, because everyone already agreed. What pages in my copy of the meditations have sticky notes? Let's pull one up. So here's one from the first book, or the second book of meditations. When you wake in the morning, tell yourself the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. They are like this because they can't tell good from evil, but I have seen the beauty of good and the ugliness of evil, and have recognized that the wrongdoer has a nature related to my own, not of the same blood or birth, but of the same mind, and possessing a share of the divine. And so none of them can hurt me. No one can implicate me in ugliness. So much of the genius of Marcus Aurelius there. He did so very early in the book. Is there a movie that you feel like was actually better than the book? Question. Fight Club's probably up there. Yeah, Fight Club. Let's see here. Sorry, there's a lot of questions. Let me go back to email. Have I worked with Jerry Canola? No, I don't even know who that is. Someone saying that someone wants help updating a book that one of his students wrote. I'd like to help him play quarterback with more talented editors. Where do I find the talent to support? Oh man, I don't know. That talent's too hard to find. If I knew it, I would keep it for myself. I have like Haruki Murakami. I like Norwegian Wood, and I liked What I Talk About When I Talk About Running. That's actually my favorite. Favorite rapper? That is a good question. Probably Lil Wayne, but I tend to be more of a specific songs than specific rappers, because I feel like many of them have many terrible songs. Is Brass Check competing against Book in a Box? No. How do you maintain contact with your large network of collaborators, especially with your balance? I don't know if I have a large network of collaborators. I'm not quite sure what that means. What are your thoughts on marketing and how Louis C.K. released Horace and Pete? Well, you know, it's interesting. I listened to a really long podcast with Louis C.K. where he's talking about the show, and it sounded fascinating. Watched it. Nothing about the show struck me as being that interesting to me, so I just didn't watch it. So I'm not sure if that's a result of his marketing strategy or the specific piece. What's my favorite book about the Civil War? I've been lately pretty amazing in terms of the lead up to the Civil War. I don't know if there's one good book, but you could do worse than Shelby Foote's giant series on the Civil War. You could do worse than Bruce Canton, and I would really suggest everyone read Sherman's memoirs and Grant's memoirs. They are two works, two giants of American literature. They accomplished in the war. Favorite musicians besides Iron Maiden. I like Francis and the Lights. I've been listening to him a lot lately. I like The War on Drugs. Michael Gervais talks about personal philosophy in 25 words or less. I like control what happens, you control how you respond. Lessons learned from shipping products using Amazon. He asked us a couple times, hockey brands. No experience whatsoever there. All my stuff is sold through publishers, so thankfully I don't have to handle that. How do I decide who to keep around me as my closest friends? That's I don't know if I spend a lot of time thinking about who my friends are. I think I don't know. I tend to think these things are more emotional than they are intellectual. So it's not. Thoughts on statue removal? I've written a bunch about this. Check out my piece. We used to put up statues. Now we just tear them down. I think 98% of the Confederate statues should absolutely come down. But I think it says something a lot about where we are right now as a culture that we have no idea what to replace them with. How did publishing your first book change your process of writing? Well, it taught me how to be a writer. I had no idea how to do anything that large. I mean, I had some notion of it, but I'd never actually done it before. I try not to. I read both the reviews of Daily Stoic and of Perennial Seller in the Wall Street Journal. That was more just a cool thing, but I try to skim reviews when I read them. If you read the good reviews, you have to read the bad reviews. It's true. I actually tend to focus on the bad reviews because there might actually be some. Bye, Cal. Thanks for coming. How many hours of sleep do I average? 7 or 8. I think sleep's very important. Sometimes more than 7 or 8. Have a 10-month-old though, so it's not always in my control. What's non-negotiable in my morning routine? Well, lately I take my son, if I'm home, I take my son for a walk while my wife sleeps. It's my favorite thing to do in the morning. So I try to do that. I don't have any non-negotiables really, but I try to stick to the routine. What authors did I dislike at first that I grew into? That is a very good question for which I don't immediately have an answer. What's my morning routine? I've written about this a bunch of times, and if you go to my site, writingroutines.com, I talk a lot about my morning routine and my writing routine. So check that out. Favorite book about New Orleans, Hit the Whale, The Moviegoer by Walker Percy. Didn't really like The Accidental City. I wish that I did. New Orleans. Yeah, start with those. About learning a craft through with a mentor. My opinion is yes, that's the best, if not the only way to do it right. I've written about finding mentorships a bunch of times. Check them out. Just Google my name, mentorships. I think the problem is people think that you go out and ask someone to be your mentor. That's like asking someone to be your girlfriend. It's something that happens. It ensues. It's not acquired. How important are getting blurbs for your book? Much less important than people think, and take up far too much time. If you're a self-published author, paradoxically, they're more important. If you're a traditionally published author, they are less important than people in the industry think. What's the most unethical practice in the publishing industry? Manipulation of the bestseller list. The New York Times list itself, I think, is unethical in its manipulation and movable goalposts. I think audiobooks and ebooks should have a higher royalty, and publishers, since they add less value in those mediums, should give up a larger portion of the revenue. Lots of other authors are my friends. They help me be a better writer in person. We talk about this all the time. I met John Ecoff. We've known each other for a couple years, but never talked. You know, about the business, about what's hard about it, advice. You know, it just happens. Any advice at the top of your head for first-time parents? Go on a baby moon if you haven't already. Very important. I would say try not to make it a project. You know, your kid is not like a startup that you're growing or a thing to be optimized. It's like a human being, and so I'm somewhat dismayed by the incredible amounts of optimization and work that people throw into their kids, as if it's not a fairly natural process that should be enjoyed. It was very hard to pitch a publisher, to go from marketing to stoicism. I took less money for it. I don't think they totally understood it at first. If the book is good, you shouldn't have a problem ultimately. Show of all time, Seinfeld. Brian Koppelman's podcast. I like Lance Armstrong's podcast. I like Mark Maron. I like Pete Holmes's podcast. When I dated, did I have marriage in mind? My wife and I met when we were 19, so I definitely did not have marriage in mind. Nick, I already answered your question, and you just asked it again. Thoughts? Don't give a shit. Maybe there's life elsewhere in the universe. Doesn't affect me. Don't have an opinion about it. Tips for picking a powerful book name. Well, first off, they're called titles. And there is an art to titles, but the general rules matter less than the specific book you are writing and the specific audience that you're going for. Thoughts on Goodreads? I appreciate what they do for this community, but I don't use it. How many hours do I write? It depends. I try to write at least a couple hours a day. Usually I have something that I'm working on, and I try to do it in the morning. I don't have a specific time I'm sitting in the chair unless it's a book that I'm working on, which like make from nothing, like not editing. And in those cases, it's the idea is that I need to be in there probably half a day. Does my livestock yield income? Yes, I've sold one round of calves, and it was for a shockingly small amount. I think we sold three or four. We made like $1,500. It will be a long time before we recoup the investment. Probably never to recoup the amount of time that goes into it. Myself is 50, hopefully still alive. I got Memento Mori coins. I do give them to people that I know. I promise you, it's less awkward than you think. How do I like ButcherBox? /investor in ButcherBox, and I fucking love it. A special freezer for my garage just to hold them all. Don't know what it is. It's like grass-fed meat, antibiotic-free pork, and chicken, and they send it to you once a month in a big box. They sort of pick what they're going to give you. It's all sorts of really cool cuts. Grocery store, and it's better than stuff you can get at the grocery store. Up here too. So does anyone have any last questions? My sponsor by Topo Chico. I wish I was sponsored by Topo Chico. Again, I have some of their stock on the Mexican stock exchange. Although I'm positive it will, but I just wanted to support a good cause. What's the best way for me to use my content for greater good and reach more people with your content? Post it as widely as possible and then make more. Do I drop books if I'm boring? Yeah. If a book sucks, the author's not doing their job, and I feel no compunction about quitting. I'm actually very harsh on books because as a writer, I know what the job is. If I was going to date again at 30, how would you approach it? Man, no idea. I liked the book that Tucker Max and Niels Parker wrote called Mate, or What Women Want. Might be worth looking at. Would I have launched American Apparel under my experience under my belt? No, nor do I think I would have been qualified to. Don't hire a marketer unless they have a track record of successfully marketing things. So to start a marketing company having not marketed anything, that would not be great. What I do purely for fun, exercise, work on my ranch, hang out with my kid, play with my dog, read. Let's do 3 more questions. Let's see what we got. My next book tour will pass me through Eastern Europe. Yes, I hope so as well. What's my next book? Here, I'll show you. Book. How do I know if I'm working on an intractable piece and needs to change direction? That's the intuition that you develop as a writer. The more you do it, the clearer the sense you have because you've done it enough times. growing body of research between social media usage and depression in kids. Yeah, if you're letting your kids spend a ton of time on social media as a parent, I don't think you're doing your job. What 3 cryptocurrencies I'm excited about? Bitcoin, Ether, and Zcash. Journal look like. Check out I don't know what you can pre-order on Amazon. That will be my new morning journal. Would I race Robert in the pool? We've only swum in the same pool once. Once. And then on my wedding day, he and I and a friend of mine swam in Barton Springs, and it was 30 degrees outside, and I thought that he might die and that everyone would blame me for killing Robert, so we probably won't swim together anymore. Other than my index card, do I keep a log of anything else in your life? Yeah, I mean, I keep a journal, and then I save papers and documents and stuff that are important to me. All right, most important skill to develop: strategic mind, the ability to see a big picture, the whole chessboard, etc. Have I ever visited any country in Asia? I've been to Hong Kong, Thailand, and something else I'm forgetting. Does traveling equate to inspiration? Traveling, I would say, is overrated as a source of inspiration. Sorry, no advice for filmmakers other than what's in the book. I don't want to embarrass myself. Let's do one more. All right, who wants to go? I'll answer the next question that comes in. Would I ever write fiction? Hopefully not. Thanks, everyone. Really appreciate it.